Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is September 28th, 2025. We are in the New Testament book of Luke. We're going to read chapter 19, verse 47 to 20, verse 44 today. All right, so Jesus just cleansed the temple, threw out all the money changers and people hawking wares, and essentially taken over part of the courtyard so people couldn't get to the temple. And the Pharisees are angry at him, but the crowds are surrounding him, and Jesus starts to teach. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees want to question him about his authority, and they ask him, well, where'd your authority comes from? And it's interesting as Jesus turns the question on them, and he asks them, well, let's talk about John the Baptist. Did he come from God, or did he come on his own? And the Pharisees are stumped because they say, well, if we say he was from God, then Jesus is going to say, well, why didn't we listen to him? And if we say John did it on his own, the people are going to rip us apart because they really love John. And they say, well, good, we don't know. And Jesus says, okay, well, then I'm not going to tell you by whose authority I'm here. I'm not going to answer your questions if you won't answer my questions. Then he gives them a parable of a vine dresser, which we want to see the vine dresser, the master, is God, and we want to see that the servants he's sending to these evil people are his prophets who they keep killing. And then he sends his own son, who is Jesus, and they say, well, let's kill Jesus, and then we can loot the vineyard ourselves. And the Pharisees understand that he said that about themselves, and they get really angry. And then they come back and they say, well, let's us try and trap Jesus just like he tried to trap us with that John the Baptist. Well, actually he did, because they didn't answer. So they say, well, the Pharisees said, here's the tax. Everybody hates the taxes. So should we keep paying taxes to Caesar? And Jesus asks for the coin, and he says, whose picture's on it? And they say, well, Caesar. And they say, well, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and the spiritual things you give to God. Now the trap there is people hated the tax. So if Jesus says don't pay your taxes, he wins the people, but then they can turn him over to the Romans. If he says pay your taxes, then he loses the people. So that's the trap, but Jesus doesn't fall in that trap. So they kind of try and do what Jesus did to them with John the Baptist, but it doesn't work. Then the Sadducees say, well, let us try. And they want to give this, they don't believe in the resurrection. So they give this ridiculous example of a Levirate marriage out of Moses, that hey, if a husband dies and leaves his wife with no hair, then his brother has to come and produce a hair. And she says, well, what if this one, and then there was another one, and then there was another one, until they get 7. Whose wife is she going to be in heaven? And he comes to them and says, okay, first of all, you don't even believe in what you're asking, so there's ridiculousness. But let's look at Moses' law. And he talks about the burning bush and says, okay, God himself declared himself God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob there, as if they were still alive. So clearly there must be a resurrection. That's why you're wrong, and that's why your question was garbage. But to answer the question, we don't marry. There is no marriage in heaven. We are all individuals who worship God, and we love everyone, and we're all equal up there. And then he goes to the heart of the matter, which is, okay, you guys got the right words. And he uses a quote from the Old Testament about David, and says, okay, you understand the Messiah is a descendant of David, but what you miss is David himself calls him Lord, so he must be divine. The Messiah is God. That's what they're missing. That's the spiritual connection that they're missing. And that's pretty much where this section ends, with Jesus destroying their arguments and revealing himself to be God and revealing himself to be the Messiah. So let's go ahead. We're going to read Luke chapter 19, 47, verse 47 to 20, verse 44. And he was teaching daily in the temple, but the chief priests, the scribes, and the leaders of the people sought to destroy him, and were unable to do anything, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. Now it happened on one of those days, as he taught the people in the temple and preached the gospel, that the chief priests and the scribes, together with the elders, confronted him and spoke to him, saying, tell us, by what authority are you doing these things? Or who is he who gave you this authority? But he answered and he said to them, I also will ask you one thing, and answer me. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or from men? And they reasoned among themselves, saying, If we say from heaven, he will say, Why then did you not believe him? But if we say from men, all the people will stone us, for they are persuaded that John was a prophet. So they answered that they did not know where it was from. And Jesus said to them, Well, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. Then he began to tell the people this parable. A certain man planted a vineyard, leased it to vine dressers, and went into a far country for a long time. Now at vintage time he sent a servant to the vine dressers that they might give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the vine dressers beat him and sent him away empty-handed. Again he sent another servant, and they beat him also, treated him shamefully, and sent him away empty-handed. Then again he sent a third, and they wounded him also and cast him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, What shall I do? I will send my beloved son. Probably they will respect him when they see him. But when the vine dressers saw him, they reasoned among themselves, saying, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance may be ours. So they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, what will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy these vine dressers and give the vineyard to others. I knew I would get the right word eventually. And when they heard it, they said, Certainly not. Then he looked at them and said, What then is this that is written? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Whoever falls on that stone will be broken, but on whomever it falls, it will grind him to powder. And the chief priests and the scribes that very hour sought to lay hands on him, but they feared the people, for they knew he had spoken this parable against them. So they watched him, and they sent spies who pretended to be righteous, that they might seize on his words in order to deliver him to the power and the authority of the governor. Then they asked him, saying, Teacher, we know that you say that you teach rightly, and you do not show personal favoritism, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, Why do you test me? Show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription does it have? They answered and said, Caesar's. And he said to them, Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. But they could not catch him in his words in the presence of the people, and they marveled at his answer and kept silent. Then some of the Sadducees, who deny that there is a resurrection, came to him and asked him, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote to us that if a man's brother dies having a wife, and he dies without children, his brother should take his wife and rise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers, and the first took a wife and died without children, and the second took her his wife, and he died childless. Then the third took her, and in like manner the 7 also. And they left no children and died. Last of all, the woman died also. Therefore in the resurrection, whose wife does she become? For all 7 had her as a wife. Jesus answered and said to them, The sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are counted worthy to attain that age and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, nor can they die any more, for they are equal to the angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. But even Moses showed in the burning bush passage that the dead are raised when he called the Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. For he was not the God of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him. Then some of the scribes answered and said, Teacher, you have spoken well. But after that they dared not question him any more. And he said to them, How can they say that the Christ is the son of David? Now David himself said in the book of Psalms, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool. Therefore David calls him Lord. How is he then his son? May God bless the reading of his word. May God bless you. Bye.